Dear viewers, thank you for joining me in this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from my headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. My name is Babla Jonathan. In our top stories in this edition of the news, the president of the Northwest Regional Assembly, Professor Fu Angwafo III, says that Anglophones or Cameroonians from the northwest and southwest regions of the country have missed the way in their struggle to improve on their living conditions, referring to the armed struggle going on in those parts of the country, the northwest and southwest regions, for more than 4 years today. He says everybody should bring in humanity in everything that they do in order to ensure that the northwest region in particular is a strong part of the new Cameroon announced by the President of the Republic. He was speaking to the Inside, and you will hear him in this edition of the news. And more deaths recorded on national highways in the Republic of Cameroon. The Fumban-Bangante highway in the in the west region of the country has recorded several deaths and more than 10 persons injured in another road accident which occurred at the weekend. Details coming up next. Several persons are reported dead on the road linking Fumban and Bangante in the west region of the Republic of Cameroon. This is another road accident that has occurred on roads in the Republic of Cameroon, leaving several persons dead and more than 10 persons injured. The accident occurred over the weekend in the locality known as Fozang, that is some kilometers away from the Nun Bridge in the west region of the country. The accident involved a public transport bus of Avenue Travel Agency, and we yet to get some more details on the casualties recorded in that accident in the west region of the country. Another person dead, this time in another part of the country, notably in Konsamba in the Mongo division, and 2 people have died in Konsamba in separate incidents that occurred today. And at the Palmier neighborhood, a commercial bike rider by name Sangu Nassis was discovered dead, and at Cartier Set, a man going to his farm died on the way as he vomited blood. And we yet to clearly establish the cause of the death of those 2 persons in Konsamba. Smanjik and Gabriel has more.
The population of Konsamba, particularly those at the Palmier quarter, began the new week with tears on their eyes after they discovered the lifeless body of a commercial bike rider in the wee hours of the day. The man in his early 40s was discovered with his hands tied behind his back and motorcycle taken away by his aggressors. They have shown us that they need our motorcycles by killing us. They steal our bikes during the day and at night, but they have never murdered anyone. The situation Sango Nassis was found showed there was no fight between him and his aggressor. It wasn't a fight, since we made some coins, as the killers didn't take away his money but his motorcycle. By the side of the corpse, we also saw a rosary.
Comme argent, il y a un petit bâton déposé, les pièces sont déposées. Ils n'ont rien pris comme argent. Son chapelet. Oui, et son chapelet.
The killing of Nsango Nassis and the taking away of his bike by thieves has led to commercial bike riders in Konsamba calling on security officials to help them. We beg on the authorities to protect us, and we shall also help them to catch these thieves. We are not going to be afraid as we continue to walk. even as they now kill us before taking away our motorcycles.
C'est vrai qu'ils ont désiré de nous tuer pour prendre nos motos, mais on doit tout travailler et on est sûr un jour on doit attraper l'un.
While other bike riders are now saying that in the evening they will not carry any passenger going to the GBHS, Konsamba, Palmier quarters and stadium zones. At Carrefour Masanga, quarter 7 in Konsamba, it was the lifeless body of a man who was discovered. Inhabitants of quarter 7 say the man was heading to his farm in the morning when he fell and blood started oozing from his mouth. They concluded that it was due to the amount of blood he lost that led to his death. For now, no one could determine what led to his death.
And many more persons have been killed by the coronavirus in the Republic of Cameroon. And with regards to the epidemiological situation of the country, the Minister of Public Health and other officials in charge of the health sector in the country are meeting at the Public Health Emergency Coordination Center in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, they are devising strategies on how to stop the continuous propagation of the coronavirus in the country, and also other issues concerning public health in the country. Now, updates on the coronavirus situation of Cameroon in this report compiled by Équinoxe Tv.
The epidemiological situation presently shows that Cameroon has recorded 33,749 COVID-19 positive cases since its first case was detected in March 2020. This and other related statistics were given by the Ministry of Public Health during its weekly briefing on situation of the COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon.
33,749 confirmed cases, 31,362 recoveries, 523 deaths, and 2,200 active cases, including 158 in management units and 38 under oxygen. The recovery rate is 93%. And the lethality rate is 1.5%.
According to the Ministry of Public Health, the situation is under control, though new cases have been detected in all 10 regions recently. To end this, collaboration of the communities with stakeholders has to be effective.
In order to limit the damage caused by the pandemic in the socio-economic life of the country, I invite the population to persevere in the compliance with the barrier measures put in place by the government and WHO. This is an opportunity to call on all stakeholders, including communities, to become more involved in the ongoing response.
Reasons why the number of positive and death cases increased in recent days are due to the irresponsible comportment of citizens during end-of-year festivities and the incivility of Cameroonians during the CHAN 2021 tournament.
L'assouplissement des mesures barrières et la...
Added to this, non-respect of barrier measures and the progressive resumption of socio-economic and cultural activities.
Des mesures barrières par les populations.
Public Health Minister Dr. Manauda Malachi tweeted that Cameroon's position as regards procurement of the COVID-19 vaccine is clear, that it is essential to be prepared in case there is need to protect compatriots with the COVID-19 vaccine.
We'll talk more about this in the second part of this newscast. Security officials have intercepted and dismantled a network of domestic gas trafficking here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, during an operation. Over 500 bottles of domestic gas resulting from illegal transactions were confiscated by security officials. Details in this report compiled by Immaculate Fogwe.
A viral video showing two boys in a clandestine warehouse in the Yassa neighborhood in the city of Douala siphoning over 500 bottles of cooking gas. After carrying out an intensive search for the dissemination of this video on social media platforms, the Senior Divisional Officer for the Wuri, Divisional Officer for Douala 3, Wuri Divisional Delegate of Water and Energy and that of Trade and Commerce, accompanied by the Judicial Police, stormed the site, intercepting two boys.
Basically, they remove the seals and discount the product. That means shorting the public who are paying for the product. It's unfortunate because the business of distribution is done through parties, third parties. And the haulers and the drivers are basically engaged in these fraudulent activities. We went into action immediately with police. They have done wonderful work and we got them.
Officials in charge of trade and commerce equally called on local inhabitants to be vigilant when buying cooking gas.
And that we urge the customers that each time you find out that you doubt the kilo, you should either insist that the weigh it, because every station has been allocated with weighing scales, and that if an issue is raised, the adulterators or fraudsters will be taken into books.
They have promised to intensify investigation so as to bring down the entire network behind the trafficking of domestic gas in Cameroon.
Now to the crisis-stricken northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. The president of the Northwest Regional Assembly, Professor Fuangwa III, says that Cameroonians from the northwest and southwest regions of the country have taken a wrong direction in the struggle for better living conditions, talking about or referring to the 4-year-long armed conflict going on in that part of the country. It thinks that the track taken by some people from those parts of the country, the northwest and the southwest regions, to improve on living conditions of the people, in his opinion, is a wrong path that should not have been taken, because it is leading to destruction of human life and properties. And he has called on all persons to put humanity at the center of every action, every decision that they take, in order to avoid the bloodshed going on in those parts of the country. And he also indicated that it is as a result of education, poor education, notably of young people, that is resulting to some actions that they are taking, notably the killing of traditional rulers, for example. Take a listen to Professor Fuangwa III. He spoke to the Inside. President of the Republic has said on several occasions, civilians carrying guns, drop your guns and come out of the bushes. Some are still there.
Well, indeed, I have told them before, I'm begging them. Why are they suffering themselves? Why are they doing this to themselves and to their parents and their friends? How can you, therefore, do away with the symbols of community union and heritage? Of course, it is in part because the education has estranged the youth from their roots. We need the sociologists and the psychologists badly, because people have lost themselves. To do that, it means first, you are almost not human anymore. You don't identify first with man. Worse, you don't identify with your custodian. We have taken the wrong approach to mending our lives. It's not late. Let's bring back humanity into our homes, in our communities, and with that, we'll be able to make our community projects raise our community resources, get ours in the diaspora and friends to support us so that the new Northwest will be a strong part of the new Cameroon.
After the government of the first president of the Republic of Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo, selected and elaborated an ambitious pilot state agricultural project in the Konjok in the Kam division in the littoral region of the country is still in an abandoned state, and that project has not been yielding the expected fruits because it has simply been abandoned or not properly executed. Access to the vast agricultural locality is a nightmare, and farmers still use crude tools to till and toil without state subsidies. For me, I'm Strong Sander.
A trip to Konjok from Yabasi in the Kam division of the littoral region of Cameroon. The Equinoxe television team has no choice but to hire the services of this commercial motorbike rider. We are pretty lucky that it is a dry season, and instead of the bumpy, large and muddy potholes of the rainy season, the road is drowned in dust. The silence of the bush gives the feeling of a trip in a strange planet. The untarred and bumpy road does not make the journey enjoyable at all, but 90 kilometers later, we are in Konjok, a historic town in terms of agriculture in Cameroon. Due to its exceptional potentials and above all, the fertility of its soil, the government made Konjok at a certain time one of the pilot districts of Cameroon's agricultural ambitions. But today Konjok is a shadow of itself.
Il y a le cacao, le café, le plantain, le macabo, banane, l'ananas.
Enclavement is the key word in Konjok, as in this valley, where to go requires a gymnastic through a small track on a hill below hectares and hectares of cocoa trees.
La principale difficulté ici, nous avons la route. Parce que la route n'est pas vraiment praticable. Parce que vous portez.
René Numbia is the president of the Agricultural Cooperative for the Development of Motabe Village and its surrounding villages.
Mes membres produisent pas moins de 350 tonnes de cacao par an.
It is the largest cooperative in Konjok with over 350 members. He has been living here for 55 years, being one of the pioneers at the beginning of the 60s in Cameroon. At the time, it was hundreds of Cameroonians to whom the state gave financial and technical means to cut down the vast plot of forest in an almost inaccessible and uninhabited Konjok, a strategy of the 5-year plans of the Ahidjo government, which was aimed at facilitating the work of the land and boosting agricultural production. Konjok is agriculturally over 150 tons of plantains per year, 100 tons of yams, and above all, cocoa, which is produced at 2,500 tons a year. It is, however, possible to bring this production to 5,000 according to observers, but the impassable agricultural routes have frustrated the effort of the farmers.
Konjok est la mamelle nourricière de la région du littoral.
Aside from the isolation, the maintenance of the plantation is a real challenge. Since 2000, state subsidies to farmers are no longer heard of in Konjok, according to Mr. Numbia, who has 8 hectares to himself. 3 kilometers away, very close to the DO's office, are the last traces of the Kam Development Company Southern Kam. It was the company behind the strategy of the opening up and the development of the entire Kam division.
Derrière nous, la fondation de la Southern Kam, la société.
Thanks to Southern Kam,
more than 50,000 peasants settled in Konjok, benefiting from free input, technical and financial support, as well as free health care. Almost 50 years later, agricultural practice here is still being done with the hoe and the machete. The workforce is aging and hectares of plantations abandoned in this town of close to 30,000 inhabitants. Nkonjok, according to Lucas, is a clear picture of a forgotten countryside.
For me, I'm Strong Sander, ending the first part of this news hour on Equinoxe Television. Coming up in Talking Points, we are going to analyze the epidemiological situation of Cameroon with regards to the coronavirus pandemic and the COVID-19 vaccine stance of President Paul Biya's country. Meet Professor Fru Angwafo III in his capacity as public health expert. Our guest today is Professor Fru Angwafo III, President of the Northwest Regional Assembly. He is a medical expert by profession, former Director General of the Yaoundé Gynecobstetric and Pediatric Hospital. And Professor, welcome to the program.
Welcome, Mr. Babila.
Right, we start with latest information concerning the coronavirus pandemic, and the latest figures published by the Ministry of Public Health indicate that Cameroon is now counting 33,749 persons tested positive for coronavirus, and 31,362 have been treated, and 523 persons have died of the coronavirus. These are some of the figures recently published by the Ministry of Public Health as far as the coronavirus pandemic is concerned. Professor, what's your reading of these figures?
They're not good at all. And what those figures hide is that the trend, because you are talking of figures that are now, but when we look at the trend over the year, remember it was March 6th, 2020 that Cameroon declared its first case. So in roughly 11 months, 3 weeks or 2 weeks, we've had 33,000 cases and 520 something deaths. But what that hides is that 61 of these deaths have occurred in the last month, which means that the current phase of the pandemic is more serious than what we had before. And the response of the community is instead the contrary. You have a situation where when the disease was less severe, people had taken up their gear, they were wearing face masks, they were washing their hands, and they were physically distancing. They only went out for activities that must be carried out. That was when the disease was less severe. Today, we seem to have a second wave that is more severe, but the response, the public response, is less than wanting. So for me, I thank you, because it is important that we bring this to the common man, common woman in the public. We need to get ourselves back to the mindset of doing what each individual can do to stop the propagation, to stop the spread of this virus. I know that communication in the social media has been quite disturbing. People have taken sides. One thing I know is the disease does not respect persons, and it is even worse in older and even those that seem to be well-to-do, because they also have a lot of other illnesses that make immunity weak. So it is important that we physically distance, wash our hands, and when we must be together, put on our face masks so that we limit the spread.
Professor, what is wrong with communication on the social media as far as coronavirus is concerned?
Well, you have many, I would call them bizarre stories. Stories talking about some kind of world conspiracy theory to do away with black people, and telling people not to be vaccinated. But I think we must know that there are a whole system of organization in the country to make sure that inputs for the public health are of quality. So why people would imagine that just for this vaccine they are going to totally phase out and kill Africans and Cameroonians, I don't know. The same people depend on those who are sending vaccines for wheat, for bread. I think everyone here eats bread. For the medications. So if they really wanted to wipe us out, they would not wait just for the vaccines. So I think that those fearmongers and people who, unfortunately, by false propaganda, innuendo, are putting the risk of especially older people with a lot of other illnesses, putting their lives at risk. So let us, as one people, do what it takes to stave off, to keep away this virus. It has been shown. And Cameroon, do you remember, effort through the head of state was lauded. It was an exemplary country.
And talking about the management of the coronavirus, Prof, when we look at the figures, 31,362 out of 33,749 persons successfully treated of the coronavirus. That is about 95 or 93%, 93% recovery rate, and the death rate is at 1.5. What does that reflect as far as the management of the coronavirus in Cameroon is concerned?
Well, I just told you that Cameroon was cited as one of the countries that was doing a good job during the first phase. That is why, having had such success, we need to put on tighten our belts and make sure we do even better. Of course, one death is one too many. You see, sometimes statistics can be deceiving. When someone dear to you dies, even if it's the only one in a million, I bet you the pain is not less. So, yes, we can do better. Yes, we have a good program. It isn't perfect. Nothing is. But let us work together. If we work together to take the public health measures that government has taken at all levels, individual, community, when I mean community, I'm talking of villages, councils, then regions and the nation. If at all these levels we keep in mind that the success of warding off COVID depends on each individual and the collective will of our people.
What can we deduce from the that is the rate of severity rate, so to speak? The minister says that it's at 1.6%.
Well, there's a lot of scientific, I would say, theories. There are lots of them. You know, we have a younger population and therefore stronger. We are also blessed by our ecosystem. We also have a way of life which is outgoing. The temperatures seem to favor us. And then as a young population, we do not have some of the diseases older populations have that decrease immunity. So there is a whole complicity of factors that militate and favor us as far as COVID is concerned. Thank God something can favor us. But that does not mean that we should be reckless. Because I just caution you that one death is one too many. And let it happen to a close family or friend. You will see that it doesn't hurt any less.
Right. Now, about the vaccination, Cameroon seems to be pulling its legs, while other African countries are advancing in that.
Cameroon is not pulling its legs. First of all, with the billions of people on earth, the human capacity for vaccine production is very limited. You don't want me to start decrying the fact that we ourselves, we don't produce vaccines. I think national authority in this area is doing everything to see how we can procure the vaccines, secure them in a cold chain system, and then of course we have a national vaccination program that has run and been tested over the years. I would imagine that when things, all of these are ready, it'll be done. There are very few African countries indeed that have started. So let's give the proper information. As I know, there were 13 countries that were first earmarked, and I think only 4 or so have actually started, and Cameroon is coming on.
All the vaccines are coming from Western nations. African medical experts like yourself unable to
they're
produce
not
vaccines?
all coming from Western nations. China has vaccines,
Russia
has
China,
vaccines.
Russia, the United States,
Yes.
so on. The African medics, African medical experts.
Well, we have to move the gear, cultural gear, isn't it? It is one thing having a lab, but you must have a whole sector, feeder skills and expertise to do a vaccine. I don't need to enter into the development breaks. So we will get there when we would have had all those social determinants for health.